deck can exist anymore. It's just been countered so heavily, and the metagame has shifted so much. So I'm excited to see what these two players have brought.
Yeah, essentially that sort of standpoint that was made by Isaiah and a few of his other teammates that were playing that deck that weekend basically made the stand saying Jirachi is an incredibly powerful card, and if you don't keep it in check, it's just going to run through every tournament pretty much. And since then, we've seen a few players going towards different directions, and here's a couple of different directions for you right now. We're seeing Joey Ruettiger place down his prize cards, and there's a grub in there. He's going to be playing a Rayquaza Vikavolt GX deck.
All right. Yeah, this was a really popular deck early on in the standard format. You get Vikavolt with the strong charge ability, get a bunch of energy out, use your Rayquaza GX, and just Dragon Break for knockouts. But it kind of fell out of favor, especially once that Zapdos Jirachi deck hit. But pretty recently, Jose Marrero won a special event using this deck, and I think it's come back into favor. And they are both playing Rayquaza GX. Unfortunately, there are two in his prize cards.
That's a pretty awkward for Alex Dow. As you can see there, he is playing energy switches. He's not going towards the Vikavolt build. He's instead going for a Naganadel energy switch sort of turbo build of Rayquaza is what his hope is. I've had a chance to talk to Alex and about his deck choice as well. I've seen it in action over the last few days, and going to be interesting to see two Rayquaza players in the first round here. Not something I expected at all, I have to admit.
Yeah, I would not have guessed this. I don't think we saw a single Rayquaza deck in the Oceania International Championships when we were streaming our rounds, but we're going to kick off the first round here in Europe with two of them.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. It looks like the players are ready to go. We see the handshake, and it's going to be Alex Dow who kicks us off here. Alex, mainly known for, you know, he's not a stranger to playing rogue-style archetypes. He's kind of known for playing Gyarados initially, but he's going to be going with the Rayquaza deck today. Kicks off with a Marshadow in the active, has that Viridian Forest. He can instantly discard a Grass Energy. It's always great to get those into the discard pile early for your Stormy Winds abilities with Rayquaza. And he can also go ahead and grab himself another energy here just to help thin out the deck as well.
Yeah, Marshadow start, not what you want to see. Typically, you want to play out your first turn, play as many cards as you can, and then play down Marshadow and use its Let Loose ability to disrupt your opponent. But starting with it here is going to be a little bit painful.
Alex continuing to burn lots of energy with an opening Ultra Ball here. Looks like Erica's Hospitality was his only other supporter card. He's going to go ahead and grab himself a Rayquaza GX here. Has that amazing Stormy Winds ability that allows you to discard the top three cards of your deck. Amazingly, you see Joey shaking his head. Someone else is playing this deck. And you do see that first Stormy Winds. Two more energy hits for Alex. That's a lot in the discard pile early.
Yeah, and a Shining Genesect. What is going on here, Joe? But yeah, this has to be bizarre for both players. Yeah. I mean, Alex still doesn't know what Joey's playing. You see Zeraora GX, and you're thinking, okay, he's playing Pikachu and Zekrom. That's a very common deck. But, boy, how surprised is he going to be when Joe also plays down his Rayquaza GX?
It's going to be something to behold for sure. We see Alex, he gets himself a Mysterious Treasure, such a great card in this deck, as it allows you access to your Poipoles, Rayquazas, as well as things like Tapu Lele and even more Marshadow. He does play two copies in his deck, and there's already a second one in his hand. That's one thing that he might have a small advantage against Joey with. Obviously, Joey's so reliant on getting his Stage 2 online. Maybe something like a Let Loose could remove that opportunity for Joey later down the line.
Indeed. And we talk about stories that are made here at the International Championships. One of the big ones last year was Joe Ruettiger taking second at the Oceania International Championships. Of course, falling to Torrid Recliffe, who was on an unbelievable streak of winning international championships. But ever since then, Joey has had a lot of great results, and he's been one of the top U.S. players since last year.
And it's amazing to see these two players at sort of the top of the game, and they're both taking risks this weekend with archetypes that they believe gives them the best chance to win here.
Ooh, here we go.
A huge Let Loose from Alex. He's got two energies on the field already. He has a Dance of the Ancients, Tapu Koko, Prism Star on the bench as well. There's already two Lightning energies in there. Alex already having a flying start here and hoping that Let Loose can either get him into some more resources whilst at the same time trying to hurt Joey's setup.
This is just a perfect opening from Alex. The only bad thing is he has two Rayquaza prized, but beyond that, he has gotten all the energy into his discard pile. He successfully hit on those Stormy Winds abilities because he was able to discard those energy. He has Tapu Koko Prism Star to get two more energy into play, which we'll see right here with that Dance of the Ancients. It's turn 1, Joe. He's got 4 energy in play.
That's very intimidating, Joey.
He hasn't even attached.
Yeah. That's no manual attachment from Alex there at all.
Oh, and I wonder if he may have forgotten he had an energy in hand and didn't even play it. He's just like,
incredible.
there's 4 energy out. I've surely attached.
All from abilities alone, no manual attachment. Looks like Joey did find himself a Pokemon fan club.
Oh,
That's going to be
interesting.
big for him. It allows him to go ahead and secure that Grubbin early. Depending on the rest of his hand, looks like he's got himself some other basic Pokemon, so it could even just be double Grubbin here and make sure that he can try and get that Vikavolt on turn 2. So
Come on, Joe.
The Mars
We
Shadow
didn't come here
himself.
to not let loose turn 1.
Well, that's a big benefit of the Pokemon Fan Club compared to some other early game supporter cards. Obviously, it goes to your hand, whereas Professor Elm, it obviously gets you the Pokemon. Only 60 hit points or less, of course, so it's a lot less synergistic in this deck with Grubbins having 70 hit points, but they would go straight to the bench here. Joey, he's just going to use the Viridian Forest to discard that Marshadow GX attached to his active Zeraora, bench the Grubbin, and let loose his own side.
Yeah, and Joe had a Rayquaza GX in hand. He could have gone for the Stormy Winds and hoped to hit an energy off of it. He's deciding, I don't want to take that risk right now, but I got to tell you, if I were in his shoes, I would have gone for it. I would have just been like, all right, let's hope to get a Grass Energy,
That would be the dream.
Tempest GX, draw 10 cards, and get myself set up. But Joe taking a little bit more of a conservative route here and hoping he can draw some good stuff off of this let loose or at least disrupt Alex a little bit.
Something like Grass Energy Mysterious Treasure would be the absolute dream.
Yes.
That would let him use that Stormy Winds guaranteed, but looks like no hits from him there. He does have a Rare Candy and a Tapu Lele in his hand. Maybe he could get towards a Vikavolt next turn, but for now he's just going to retreat into his own Marshadow and leave it over to Alex, who's going to start his turn with, once again, that Viridian Forest Stadium. It's one of these stadium cards that one player will use to have some benefit, but it always seems to work out on both sides. It's a fantastic stadium for both players, just guaranteeing those energy cards so often is just vital. Alex is going to go ahead, discard his Zeraora, and then just grab himself a Lightning Energy from his deck, always thinning the deck, which is great. And
He's going to take a big lead here.
This is huge.
He has the Guzma for the Grubbin on Joey's side, and this is the downside of the version that Joe's playing. If your Grubbin gets knocked out, your deck just kind of sputters. Without that strong charge ability, you don't have great ways to have that explosive turn, and it's just going to set him back so far. Alex already has 5 energy in play. Dragon Break can do 180 damage next turn, which knocks out most of the things in Joey's deck. And it's going to be a true uphill battle for him from here.
Really, really awkward stuff. He has been able to replace his Grubbin, at the very least, with that Nest Ball to kick off his turn. He's also going to have a quick scout through all of his cards in his deck to make sure he knows what's prized. We are going to see him then go for the Wonder Tag ability with Tapu Lele. It's going to grab him a Volkner so that he can grab himself a Lightning Energy and any trainer card he likes as well. He might just be looking for, yet again, something like a Nest Ball for another Grubbin.
Right.
If he does feel that they're important enough, looks like Rescue Stretch is going to be his target for essentially the same effect here, because he really does need to secure a Vikavolt if he wants any chance of sort of coming back into this game. He needs that energy acceleration.
Yeah, he's just so far behind right now. Alex is easily going to take the second knockout here. He'll go down to 4 prize cards on his next turn, and that's just a big hole to crawl out of. The only thing going for Joey, and he doesn't even really know it, is that there are still 2 Rayquaza prized for Alex. So his energy acceleration is a little limited. If one Rayquaza goes down, that's 3 energy off of his board. We haven't seen him get any Poipole or anything into play, so no Naganadel for that charging up ability. There is a window here for Joey to come back, but it's going to require some pretty good turns here.
Yep, it might be, once again, him ending his turn, going back into something like the Marshadow as well, just to try and buy himself some more time here, send some non-GXs Alex's way, because he has to respect the fact that 1 Stormy Winds and 1 attachment is just so likely from Alex. Obviously, we know that's not the case, but he's playing a little bit safer here, trying to give up non-GXs rather than GXs here, as Alex is able to Mysterious Treasure away a Tapu Lele here, and He's going to go ahead and grab himself those poi poles, trying to get that sort of retention of energy, which is such a big deal in his deck list. Whereas Joey has the sort of weakness in the early game where the Grubbins can get knocked out. As long as that Vikavolt's online, he's not going to have trouble replenishing energy. For Alex, it's more of a story of trying to use things like Wishful Baton, a few tool cards he plays in this deck, as well as trying to get those Poipoles and Naganadels online to charging up. Even though they're not the most ideal attackers a lot of the time, they're just energies to work towards Rayquaza's damage output.
So, Joe, we've seen a pretty big shift in the metagame since the Oceania International Championships. I'm not quite sure how we got to the point where Rayquaza decks have come back into the mix to the point where multiple people are playing it against each other round one. Why do you think this deck has come back all of a sudden?
Well, this is one of those decks that there's the sort of impetus that you have so much basic energy and so much energy retention. You're not afraid of any of these sort of defensive controlling archetypes that are trying to simply remove an energy a turn and deny you from taking knockouts long enough to win the game without even taking 6 prize cards. So this has a great defense against an archetype like that. Also, the amount of field blower we've seen is pretty much like record lows almost, I would say. Because this deck is very reliant on Wishful Baton as well, trying to take full advantage of that. We've also seen recently Ross Cawthon with a Quagsire Naganadel list that's also very reliant on Wishful Batons, as Alex is going to just finish his turn taking out that Marshadow here. So the Rayquaza seems to just reach high numbers and just tries to go over the top with the amount of energy cards it can get onto the field. But it is really interesting, as you said, when there's the likes of Zapdos being threatened out there right now, there is definitely some risk to playing the Rayquaza decks.
Yeah, to me this certainly looks like a response to recent tournament results, at least in the U.S., with Caleb Gedimer winning with that Zoroark GX control deck. And then the second place deck was another control deck with the Regigigas and Hoopa. So yeah, this is one of the decks that is kind of immune to those control strategies because you can get so much energy into play and also recover it. It just feels like a pretty solid matchup, and boy, people do not like losing to those control decks.
It's one of those strange phenomenons where maybe it's only 5% of the room total of people playing the stalling decks, but those are some bad beats, and some people really don't like facing those sorts of archetypes. So these two players taking a stand so that they can rub their hands together rather than put their hands in their heads when they see stalling players.
All right, so this is a huge draw from Joey. He needs to find Vikavolt here so he can strong charge, and he does draw it.
That's huge. He can now use strong charge this turn. He's got 2 energy on his Zeraora so far. Looks like he does have a Rayquaza as well in his hand.
It's a perfect draw off that Lily. He didn't have Vikavolt or Rayquaza GX in his hand, and off those 4 cards, he drew them both. And now he can Stormy Winds. Looks like he's actually going to discard an energy so he can get one into play. And with strong charge and an attachment for the turn, he gets there. He gets to 180 damage.
Joey's going to have a quick look and see what resources are left. There's already a couple lightnings in his discard pile. One already on his Zeraora. I wonder if he can actually strong charge enough here. He's also got his manual attachment of a lightning. This is one of those things where the deck is trying to juggle the amount of lightning energy and grass energy. And we are going to see him strong charge 1 grass to his Rayquaza and actually 1 to his Vikavolt, which is very interesting. It does have its own attack, of course, that can hit 150 damage, but it's one of those strange things where sometimes you look to put it on something like a Grubbin or onto the Tapu Lele just so that your Vikavolt isn't like Guzma'd up and knocked out, because that's one of your big pieces here. But Joe, with an amazing turn now, he can freely retreat and knock out Alex's Rayquaza here. As we know, there's a few prized for Alex, and there's not been any sight of a Wishful Baton, so this is a huge response from Joey here.
2 prize swing. We're now tied in prize cards 4 apiece. And it's going to be up to Alex to respond. He does have the tools to do it. If he can find that Naganadel use charging up. We also see the Tapu Koko GX in his hand, so he can certainly respond with a knockout here, but he needs to do something. And as bad as the first couple turns were for Joey, he kind of made up for it with that excellent third turn.
Alex now able to use Erica's Hospitality. It allows you to draw the number of cards up to the amount of Pokemon your opponent has in play. He finally finds himself some Wishful Batons at this stage now. I believe he also took one of those Rayquazas off of prize cards, so he can now use Rescue Stretcher in addition to that and just try and redevelop this board after Joey's big knockout. He's going to grab himself a Naganadel, which can also add to the amount of energy that's going to finish up on this board as well. He's going to go for a charging up here. It's a big back and forth between these Rayquazas. Joey now has his stage 2 online, and it's going to be down to Alex to try and use the likes of these tools to keep his energy on board for as long as possible. We are going to see him continue to stormy winds. His deck is looking pretty thin already, seeing as though he's had a couple of roaring turns with a lot of energy hitting the discard pile. He's going to be able to grab himself another grass energy here, working his way towards his own response knockout. Now he's just a turn attachment away from getting there, and he has Wishful Batons on his side as well, which is looking pretty reasonable for him right now.
Yeah, and that Radiant Forest has been so excellent for him all game. He's had hands where he's just, I didn't draw an energy, but because that Stadium card has been sitting there the whole game, he's been able to just discard a card from his hand, go search for an energy. And we'll have to see. It looks like he is going to attack with Rayquaza GX. He did have an option for Tapu Koko GX if he wanted to use the GX attack, but he's going to opt to use the Dragon Break. As long as he attaches one more energy, he can get this knockout.
Interesting choice for him to attach to the Rayquaza GX. It might be literally a case that there may not be many grass energies left in his deck at this point because it's got so thin through it. And one big back and forth swing in this sort of mid-game is now Joey plays a couple copies of Lysander Labs, which is incredible. It can be a great way to slow down Alex's the amount of energy that he has on board. We are going to see him go for a Cynthia here, and you've got to think that that's what he's looking for this turn alongside maybe his own Rayquaza GX, which is also a priority for him. But it's come to this point where they're both just hitting good damage, and as long as Joey can find himself a Rayquaza, he should be able to get a response here, and if it can be followed up with a Stadium, it would be absolutely huge once again. But he's still playing from behind right now. Alex is sort of presenting this board state that's saying, currently, I can just win the game next turn, knocking out a GX Pokemon, and it's down to Joey to see if he can deny that. He's got himself an Ultra Ball.
Yeah, I think he wants Shaman Prism Star here. He can attack with a non-GX Pokemon here so that Alex doesn't go down, win the game by knocking out one more GX. He is at 2 prize cards right now. The prizes on the screen are flipped a little bit. It's 4 for Joey, 2 for Alex. So if he can get this knockout with Flower Storm, knockout, and Alex doesn't find Guzma to go after a GX on his bench, Joey can still win this game.
That's got to be what he's looking for at this point. He can use Viridian Forest to then get himself that second grass energy, of course, so he can use that Flower Storm attack. He's still got that free retreating option on the Zeraora as well, so he's just at this point putting his hands together and hoping that Alex does not have the vital Guzma to close the game here. Joe's going to continue to get a bunch more energy into play at the same time with this Dance of the Ancients Tapu Koko. So he's got plenty. He can freely retreat into the Zeraora and take that knockout. Alex able to put 5 energies onto his Rayquaza, go into his own Shaman with free retreat, and straight away he shows Joey the Guzma.
Does have Guzma to clean up one more GX, and looks like Alex Dao going to take the first game in this battle of the Dragon Breaks. Going first there was a really big deal. The let loose on the first turn disrupted Joey just enough where he kind of stumbled out the gates and was not able to get that turn 2 like a Volt. Just a perfect start from Alex. Got a bunch of energy in play turn 1. Turn 2 got to play Guzma, knock out the only Grubbin Joey had, and it just was not able to recover after that.
Yeah, and Alex's deck is actually very interesting. It kind of reminds me of a throwback to the World's Rayquaza decks that we saw with all the Max Elixirs now sort of being replaced by one Dance of the Ancients Koko Prism Star, where you're trying to develop this board as quickly as possible using your Ultra Balls and Mysterious Treasures to find as many Rayquazas and as many energies you can get as possible. Finish your turn on a Let Loose and just give your opponent that sort of 1 or 2 turn clock before you start running away with the game. And as we saw, even when it's up against opposing Rayquazas, just getting that 1 turn ahead was enough for Alex in this situation.
Yeah, you can certainly see how powerful it can be. When everything goes right, you get all the energy in play, you start attacking for huge damage very quickly, you disrupt your opponent with the Let Loose. It can be very difficult to respond to that sort of pressure. There were some decks in the metagame that made this deck not so favorable. Of course, the Zapdos decks traded very favorably with this kind of a deck, just using 1 prize attackers. The ascent of Tapu Koko GX and all these different lightning decks makes it tough to use Rayquaza, but hey, when the metagame is right, it is still a very, very powerful card. We saw it at the World Championships this past year, and if you get paired against the right decks, and if the field is full of those control decks, and a lot of these decks that use tag teams or big Pokemon GX, then Rayquaza can be a perfectly good choice.
Going to be interesting to see how Joey tries to respond here. Couple awkward prize cards for him. He's got the Shaman Prism Star, one of his own Rayquaza GX, as well as the Delmise, another non-GX tech attacker for him, really. He's going to kick off here. He has himself a Rayquaza, and he's got that awesome Pokemon fan club on turn 1. That's when you want to see it. I can guarantee you grubbing, and he's just going to go for 2 this time, taking a safer approach by the looks of things.
Yeah, and he does start off with that Rayquaza GX, so not a bad opener. This is really all he's hoping to do. You know, Pokemon Fan Club's a little interesting. We don't see that card in very many decks. It's been around for a very long time. It's just very simple. Search your deck for 2 basic Pokemon, put them into your hand, and when you have it on the first turn, it lets you get those grubbing into play. Last season, we saw a lot of Bridget, which allowed you to get 3 basic Pokemon, put them straight to your bench, but now Pokemon Fan Club only gets 2. But it does come with the benefit of the Pokemon go to your hand instead, so you can do things like use Marshadow Let Loose or Tapu Lele GX's Wonder Tag.
Yeah, definitely a big deal for him, especially Joey's list as well, having Stormy Winds available to him every time as well. So although it is mostly used on turn 1, he does have a slight flexibility thanks to Pokemon Fan Club. Nothing else though, no turn 1 attachment or anything else of the sort. So he's just sort of sitting on his hand right now as Alex is going to start with a Wonder Tag of his own here, and he's just going to have to Cynthia away what look to be a bunch of other suboptimal supporter cards. He's going to look for a better 6 here. Definitely not the lightning start that we saw from him last game.
And interestingly, Joey does have Marshadow in his hand, and he opted not to let loose on the first turn. So I got to assume he's sitting on something good. Usually when you have Marshadow in your hand, you just want to dump it immediately and mess with your opponent. But if he has Rare Candy and Vikavolt in hand, he may not want to let loose.
I can see him shuffling through his hand, but just about there is a Rare Candy and Vikavolt there, so that's a pretty good reason to hold for him. Alex is going to use Mysterious Treasure.
He's
get
going
rid
to
of a Lily. It's time for him to go for that second chance with Let Loose here. Doesn't look ideal for him though. There's not much else playable for him. He may just be thinning his hand out here and just trying to reset, but wow, just not playing any other cards. The Cynthia was not kind to him, and now he's just going down to 4 cards. This is really awkward for Alex, missing all energy, not wanting to commit even a Wishful Baton. He knows how important they are to stick onto Rayquaza GXs. He's seen no sign of Stadium from Joey at all yet, remember? So he's just looking for the reset of 4 cards and hoping for a better chance. We saw how it can go on all cylinders sometimes on turn 1 in the first game, but this is a different story altogether.
Yeah, Alex not afraid to just say, you know what, let's make this messy. Let loose. Good luck.
Wow. Well,
sometimes you let loose. Sometimes it's let's lose instead.
Joey gonna mull things over now as Alex has retreated his Tapu Koko. Obviously, it's a big way that he can burst a bunch of energy onto his board. So he's gonna try and protect that and go into his Marshadow here as Joey is able to at least find himself an Ultra Ball that can grab him a Tapu Lele, and he can go ahead and play a Cynthia here to reload his own hand back up to a healthy 6 cards. So looking good for him. No guaranteed Vikavolt just yet. So Alex currently a little bit safe, but we'll see how kind the Cynthia is to Joey here.
Yeah, ideally he would get Rare Candy, Vikavolt, Energy, and Dragon Break for a knockout on his second turn. But I think given how weak Alex's hand is and how bad his start was, as long as he just gets like a Grass Energy and is able to Tempest GX for 10 cards, he's going to be in a great position.
Oh, wow, but he can do one better.
Or he can just, draw everything.
Get it all. It looks like he doesn't have a manual attachment, though, so it may still end up being the Tempest GX here. It's a great option for him, as we are going to see him strong charging. He does have more Mysterious Treasure in his hand as well, but as you said, Alex, with such a slow start, gives the sort of leeway to Joey in this occasion to use that big Tempest GX, once again choosing to attach more energies onto his Vikavolt. He likes having it as an attacking option when he needs to. But he is just going to get the 1 energy on the active, 1 to the back. Such great flexibility with this Vikavolt strong charge ability that once you get that Rare Candy online, your deck already does start flowing. And now he's going to be able to get himself a big hand size if he chooses to, off of a Rayquaza as well. He can thin his hand down a little more as well, so plenty more options available.
Yeah, may as well play out as many cards as you can if you're going to dump your hand and draw 10 cards. Yeah, another thing, putting the lightning energy on your Vikavolt allows you to, once you have Zeraora GX with the Thunderclap Zone ability, it allows you to have kind of a free retreating Pokemon. You assume in this kind of a matchup, or in most matchups, that your opponent's going to knock out your Rayquaza GX, because if they don't, they're just going to keep getting hit for big damage. So putting a lightning energy on your benched Pokemon is fine. It's not usually going to get knocked out, because if it does, you're like, okay, I Dragon Break you again.
Yes, exactly. Joey had the option to Mysterious Treasure for a Rayquaza GX, but chose against it. Instead, just benched his Tapu Koko and drew those 10 cards. Sends it back over to Alex, who is able to Ultra Ball for his second Let Loose and reset that very scary hand. But the damage is kind of already done. Joey's already got his Vikavolt online.
Yeah.
So Alex, again, just sort of rolling the dice and hoping that this Marshadow can get him into some supporter cards, some Rayquazas, and pretty much everything. He's very far behind right now, and his board is starting to get clogged by Pokemon with abilities that don't really help out from this point onwards as well, which is definitely a concern when Stormy Winds is a big part of his damage output at the end of the day, because he doesn't have that Vikavolt to fall back on.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't work the first time, but maybe the second time this Let Loose will work out. Yeah, Alex seems so far behind. I mean, he has to get a huge turn here. Unfortunately, his bench is full of, I mean, there's 2 Marshadow in play. There's a Tapu Lele GX. There's not as much bench space as you would like to just bench a bunch of Rayquaza GX. You're not leaving yourself any room for those Poipole to eventually evolve into Naganadel. I just feel like if he doesn't get a huge turn here, it might be worth just scooping it up and let's go to Game 3. But we'll see what he decides to do.
Ooh, no energy for Alex. That's really rough for him. He actually already has 3 in there, to be fair, so that's actually not too bad. I'm thinking he may just have to Lily here without using that Shame in Prism Star. Like you said, the bench space is becoming more and more premium to him. He would much prefer something like a Zeraora on his board or a Rayquaza GX as well. He does have Energy Switch, no Lightning Energy to attach for turn though, so I don't think he can quite get there. Maybe we are still looking at the Tapu Koko Prism.
Yep, he's got 2 Lightning in there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Even an attack here isn't getting a knockout. Yeah, I would look at this situation and be like, not winning this one.
He's just going to instead bench his Shaman Prism Star, send it over to Joey, and I think it's one of those moments where it's like, well, let's see if Joey has a Guzma at the very least. Let's force him to have that big knockout, and then he's going to be in that sort of scenario where he's thinking, man, I am really far behind at this stage, but we're looking at Joey's hand, and it's there for him right now. It's looking pretty juicy for him. He's got that option. He's got the strong charge. He can attach and still have enough energy on board, more than likely to take a big swing here. So,
yeah, he doesn't have Zeraora GX, so he doesn't have a free retreater, but he can attach to Tapu Lele GX, retreat, and then recover the energy with the Dance of the Ancients. So I'm actually not sure if that's enough, though. It might only get to 5 energy.
Yeah, that's right. That's only 150. There's only there's no energy currently in his discard pile. So he may need the help of his Let Loose to get him over the line if he chooses to go for an aggressive Guzma. Instead, he could just accept the sort of single prize and just go for a Lily here to top up his hand as well. Depends on what route he wants to take here. Looks like Joe is going aggressive. He's going to try to pick off this Rayquaza. He's got currently no energy in his discard pile, but a Let Loose could help him get towards that goal. If he's able to find an extra discarding card for a Lightning Energy, that would be a big knockout for Alex. And, it's the 2 energy on his Rayquaza. That's pretty much going to settle the game. So it's a big 4 cards once again from Let Loose. We've seen it be so decisive in both of these games so far, and both players are quite reliant on the Marshadow by the looks of things, and it basically gives you a second bite at the cherry if you fail off of your first supporter card here. In this case, Joey going to use a Guzma, try and take the aggressive approach here. No energy cards for him. Maybe he could Mysterious Treasure into a Rayquaza and attempt a Stormy Winds, but that's really kind of risky.
Yeah, if he's got any energy in his discard pile, if he's got a Grass Energy, that's one way to go about it. I think there might already be a Grass Energy in there, so
you
can Dance of the Ancients, get the 5th energy into play, and indeed,
it's there.
And if he has that mysterious treasure, he can go ahead and grab Rayquaza GX. Stormy wins, and yeah, we're going to see a Dragon Break knockout. And if you're in Alex's shoes here, how do you come back?
I mean, it takes just so much for him. He has no Naganadel online. He's already used his Dance in the Ancients, Tapu Koko. That's one of his big bursts of recovery in terms of energy cards, and that's all taken away from him. So now we see there's enough energy in play for this big knockout from Joey, and Alex we said he needed a lot last turn, and it just seems to be getting further and further out of his grasp at this point.
Yeah, and Alex is just going to concede. He's already used his Tapu Koko Prism Star. He's got no way to attack this turn, so makes the correct decision here. Don't need to waste any more time. This game is over. Let's move on to a third game where Alex gets to go first again and has plenty of time to perhaps win this series.
Yeah, I think he shouldn't be too concerned. That's one of the other benefits of playing these Rayquaza GX-based decks. They finish the game quickly, win or lose. They're either going to flood the board of energy and just overwhelm the opponent, or they're not, and they can move on to the game free. I think another big deal coming into these big 9-round tournaments is that you want to conclude games one way or the other. It's so much better to take a win and a loss here or there rather than just taking ties, because you're still ending up on the favorable side of points more often than not. So just getting a deck that can finish a series of 3 games is such a big deal, and Alex helping his cause here by getting that early concede to give him enough time for this game 3 here, and he's hoping that, again, Let Loose could be a little bit kinder on his side, make Joey have that awkward start with only like 1 or 0 grub in, and he's going to feel in a lot more better position.
Yeah, there's a lot of upside to running this style of deck. Not only do games tend to complete quickly, but it's kind of a deck that snowballs. If you have a great start, everything goes well. You keep doing a bunch of big damage, and when it doesn't go well, you do basically nothing. And it lets you get a good read on, am I going to be able to win this game? Mm-hmm. And when you can recognize whether or not you're going to win the game very quickly, it allows you to make quick decisions on, I'm not going to win. I can concede this game, save time, so I can complete the match. So there is a lot of merit to playing kind of a somewhat straightforward deck like this, where your game plan is the same every game. Just get a bunch of energy out, attack, let loose, hope your opponent doesn't draw anything. The downside is there's not a lot of wiggle room for making creative plays. You just kind of have one track of attack as quickly as I can. But yeah, especially with a tournament this long, playing a deck like this has a ton of benefits.
Yeah, and especially as well because these are sort of on the more rogue scale of things as well. People may not know how to play around it in certain situations. You can put people in these spots where they're unfamiliar as well. So you can have a trick up your sleeve that maybe they're not thinking about, some tech cards, and you can catch people off guard. And also, when you can do that, that's already going into a game with a big advantage as well. So that's another big benefit here. You can see Joey with a couple of lightning energies.
3 lightning prize.
Yeah, that's a lot because rough. He is reliant on that that ability from the Vikavolt, of course. Strong charge. Alex, well, we see a Let Loose in his hand, and that's what's going to happen straight away here. Joey starting off with his own Marshadow, which is very awkward for him. Alex going to get an attachment onto Shaman and Let Loose. Let's go.
This feels awful. When you can start off with a lot of the Jirachi decks, when you could start with Jirachi against Let Loose, then you're like, whatever. I can at least get something off of the Stellar Wish. When you start with Rayquaza GX, you can at least be like, fine. I can at least Tempest GX, draw 10 cards, and get out of this. When you start with a Pokemon like your own Marshadow, and your opponent goes, all right, Let Loose, you start the game with 4 cards, good luck. It just puts so much pressure on you right away. I mean, you have to draw perfectly from here to have a chance.
And speaking of drawing perfectly, Alex has done exactly that. He's able to get himself a Viridian Forest. That can get him a second Lightning Energy that he can then immediately Mysterious Treasure away. And then Lily for a whopping 8 cards. That's ideal for him. Joey hoping to have the same kind of fortune here. But this is a huge turn from Alex. Absolutely incredible stuff already.
Not bad.
That is probably the best Marshadow he could have ever hoped for. 2 Lightning Energies already guaranteeing this Stormy wins, but he's going to be looking for even more energy hitting this discard pile, because then he could also get that Dance of the Ancients going as quickly as possible. So let's see, another energy, 2 more energies, 1 Rayquaza, but he's going to be pretty happy about that on the balance of things. This is a crazy turn 1 from him.
This is just fantastic. you let loose yourself down to 4 cards. You dump your hand, and then you draw 8 cards. He's got everything. He's got all the energy in his discard pile. He can dance to the Ancients whenever he wants. I mean, it's very likely he's going to get a turn to attack, and he gets another Stormy Winds going. It doesn't really matter what he discards. He's already got energy in there. That's fantastic. What else can you ask for?
And he's trumping his turn 1 from game 1. He's now ending his turn with 5 energies in play. Both of these Rayquazas powered up. The Shaman has free retreat and already an energy attached to it. It's pretty much everything he could have hoped for. And let's see if Joey has a workable hand at all. He has his own Lily at the very least, so Joey can breathe a sigh of relief. He's in this game.
Yeah, at least he's got a playable hand. He does have Lily. He can play a reasonable amount of cards if he wants to. He's got 2 basic Pokemon. He might attach energy here. I'm not sure what the best route is. You might just Lily and wait to see what happens here. Or you could grab an energy with Viridian Forest, like attach it to something, I don't know, and see where it goes from there. You have to draw so well to get out of this that it might be worth just attaching, drawing as many cards as you can, and hoping for the best.
Yeah, it feels like that's the case, especially when you have that Stormy Winds on your side. You can still just get attachments onto Rayquaza if you feel like you need to Tempest, but at this point, Alex is just 1 manual attachment away from just guaranteeing a knockout if there is ever a GX in the active, so he may just start attaching to, we're going to see he's going to do the same thing as always, leave that Marshadow in the active, say, Alex, take this non-GX prize, I'm going to try and build up some GXs in the back. Also going to start getting manual attachments onto Shaman. Looks like Joey has found himself at least 1 Ultra Ball, so he can start developing some Grubbin, as we keep mentioning, so vital for his energy acceleration. We're going to see him pitch a Marshadow GX with this Ultra Ball, as well as 1 other card that he's debating over. Going to be a Lily here. Well, no, he's thinking twice about it. Yeah, it's Lily in the end. And we got to see some Grubbin or Rayquaza GX action here for sure.
Yeah, it's got to be Grubbin. If you don't get Vikavolt out turn 2, I don't know how you're keeping up with what Alex is throwing at you.
Yeah, you can't. Well, you can try your own sort of Dance of the Ancient shenanigans, but Alex's deck is more built around that than Joey's is.
Yeah.
So he wants to get the Vikavolt going for the sort of long game approach. And Grubbin's the only way that he can do that. And he's just going to try and let this Marshadow tank a hit here to buy him some more time as he does pass it over to Alex. Picking up a Wishful Baton is always a good thing for him as well. And he's got another Mysterious Treasure here. He can start getting his Naganadel if he wishes.
Throws that Shining Genesect straight into the discard pile. Not a card that is useful in this particular matchup.
Well, that Mysterious Treasure going to grab Alex that Guzma again. We've seen this before.
Indeed.
1 lone Grubbin. That's only going to be 1 target with that Guzma. And it's really awkward for Joey at this point. So much energy on the field. Guzma-ing that Grubbin. Brings up the Rayquaza GX. And Alex trying to protect his own Shaman Prism Star a little bit here as well. Leave that on the bench. He had the option to attack with that as well. Instead, he's just going to bring it all onto the Rayquaza. Also see the Wishful Baton. And he kicks off with the first prize here. And it's a really important prize for him, because Grubbin is definitely the biggest threat on Joey's side of the field. And now he's really limited, and his damage output is going to be really poor this turn. And, you know, when you've taken that 1 single prize, even if Joey throws things like Marshadow up into the active, it's still going to help Alex on the prize race alone. So it's all looking pretty solid for Alex at this point.
It's just a casual turn 2 180. That's all.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what can happen with this deck. This is why you play it. I mean, when things go well, they go well. And it is really tough to beat this kind of a start. And when you pair it with that Marshadow let loose to disrupt your opponent, it's easy to see how this can be such an appealing deck choice. Even though it's one that hasn't been as popular over the past few months, it could certainly be the right call for this weekend. And I'm curious to see how many other players chose to run this deck, or either knew it was coming and attempted to counter it in some way. It's interesting how much the metagame has shifted in such a short amount of time.
It definitely is the case. I know there's sort of a handful of a UK contingent. I know Alex does tests alongside a few other of the top UK players, and I know there's a handful of these Rayquaza decks out in the field. Joey, of course, as well, picking up the Vikavolt base build, which has kind of been popularized more recently by Jose Morero with some very impressive special event finishes with that archetype as well. There's a few other players here and there, so they're sort of waiting in the wings, these sort of Rayquaza decks. They've sort of picked up pace towards the latter end of this sort of season of Team Up. We're going to see Joey replace his Grubbin with that Rescue Stretcher, and he can go for a Cynthia here, but it just feels like there's that sort of inevitability of Alex's field right now that he's just going to start punching through and taking prizes turn after turn, that Joey's already one prize down and he really needs a way to pick up here. But with only one Grubbin, it's still looking pretty awkward for him.
Yeah, he's so far behind, and there's not even any combination of cards in his deck that could allow him to get a knockout this turn. He just can't generate that much energy without that Vikavolt, without the strong charge. And we saw just how important it was for Alex to go first, use that let loose, kind of destroy Joey's hand before he got a chance to play. And I do feel like that's one of the big weaknesses of this Stage 2 based build. It is very vulnerable to let loose on the early turns of the game, whereas maybe Alex's deck is a little more resilient against that style of play, which, I mean, we're going to see a lot of Mars Shadow this weekend. We're going to see plenty of let loose. And it just feels like Alex's deck is more built to withstand that kind of pressure from the first turn, whereas when you need to get sometimes multiple Grubbin out and then find Rare Candy and your Stage 2 on the second turn of the game, it just doesn't work as often as you'd like.
It's just a lot of pieces that you need to continually draw into. I know there's the sort of appeal of once the Vikavol's online, you're always just going to keep rolling through and taking those knockouts, but it's getting towards that stage, as you say, and that's what's going to cause Joey a bit of headache here, definitely in this first game. Alex actually going to go for 3 targets here, putting back that Shining Genesect as well as a Naganadel, and we're also going to see him now Ultra Ball away, a Marshadow and a Grass Energy. I think at this point he's got to be going for the Naganadel here. I think the only thing you're really afraid of is if a Wishful Baton gets sort of taken off the field, and he has seen via stormy winds so far that Joey does play those Lysander Labs stadiums, so Alex going to take things safe here, go for the Cynthia, and just, you know, there's not much else he needs this turn, just more attachments is really all you need, but it's just that sort of inevitable state that you're looking for. That's really the only thing we can do at this point. Alex didn't have the Guzma, so he's just going to have to try and build up his board even more so. But he's already looking in really strong shape here.
Yeah, he's just so far ahead in this game. He's going to take a 2-prize lead, which is exactly where you want to be. Once you're ahead 2 prizes, then your opponent can't even come back by like GX knockouts every turn. You're still going to win that race. So as long as Alex can continue to announce Dragon Break or Flower Storm for knockouts every turn, he's just going to win the game. It just seems inevitable at this point, and Joey, to even keep up in this game, would need an amazing turn. He would need to find Rare Candy, Stage 2, you know, get an energy, and he probably needs to also find that Lysander Labs that you were talking about, just to get those energy off the board. Even getting a knockout isn't enough if the Wishful Baton goes off, because then there's just a ton of energy left in play.
Yeah, you need to present some sort of hurdle for Alex. Right now, knockouts are literally just on his board. That stadium allowing him to literally just go ahead and grab that Grass Energy for his next Rayquaza or the Shaman, whichever he chooses. And as long as he can just keep up on taking GX knockouts, he's going to be absolutely fine here. Joey's only real route is maybe try and force another non-GX knockout out of Alex to get ahead, but it looks really awkward for him. We're going to see Joey here. He's going to Wonder Tag, trying to get himself back into better shape here, but as we say, he's fighting from the back foot right now.
And you see in his hand he even has a Rare Candy, but doesn't have a Stage 2 to go with it. He also has Volkner, but he knows just playing that isn't enough. It's just not enough to win this game. You know, he could play Volkner, grab Lightning, Ultra Ball, get his Stage 2 out, use Strong Charge, get a knockout here. But then what? Then there's still all that energy left in play, so Joey recognizes that and goes, all right, I need perfect 6 cards here to have a chance in this game. I have to go for it.
And he is going to roll that dice here. Unfortunately, he continues to not have the perfect turn. It looks like he can nest ball for a Dance of the Ancients Coco, though. I believe there are a couple Lightning Energies in there, so this could be his alternate route here. Rather than getting the Vikavolt, you do the Alex Dow impression and just try and get that Coco rolling as quickly as possible. But it's really looking awkward for him, as we say. He was already behind to begin with this turn, and he needed something crazy to get himself back into it. And it looks like it's not going to be, well, it's looking pretty awkward for him, let's put it that way. No rare candy once again.
He still has an attachment for the turn. So he does get to 6 energy, which is the perfect number for a Flower Storm knockout. And I have to wonder, is he going to try to go for a Let Loose? He still has an Ultra Ball in his hand. Depends on how important he thinks it is to get that Lysander Labs and shut off the Wishful Baton. Or do you just play down another Rayquaza GX or play nothing and just take the knockout? This seems a little strange to me because if you're going to settle for this, I mean, you might as well have just set up your stage 2 and gotten all the energy out. But I guess it almost doesn't matter what he does at this point. There's so much energy as long as Alex can, provide one more attacker, he's going to be ahead in this game. Alex
is going to Mysterious Treasure for yet another Rayquaza GX, throwing another energy into his discard pile. He's already used Charging Up on Naganadel by the looks of things. He's already got that Wishful Baton, and he's going to continue to use Stormy Winds here. He does hit once again another energy, missing all of his Guzmas as well, which is always something that's good for you, because it feels like that's something you're looking for. Alex currently doesn't have a Gusting Effect in his hand, but it may be just that he's going to end his turn attacking with a non-GX of his own side and force that question back to Joey here. And that's exactly what we're going to be seeing from Alex by the looks of things. When you don't have your own Gusting Effect, try and put your opponent on the odd prize trade to force them to have it instead. And that's what we're going to see here. Shaman Prism Star, such a powerful card, as we are going to see Alex go for the Erica's Hospitality here. It's just one of these cards that the more energy you get in play, the better for you, and Rayquaza's pretty much the perfect partner here. And it's going to get another Wishful Baton on board as well. And he's just really well set up at this point.
Yeah, I think Alex is clearly ahead here. There is a small window for Joey to still win this game, but he's going to need to draw perfectly from here on out. If he can play Guzma in consecutive turns and get enough energy in play to take knockouts, he can get to 4 prizes before Alex takes his remaining 3. But, boy, it's got to be perfect here. He's got to get up to 6 energy so he can Dragon Break for a knockout. He's already used his Tapu Koko Prism Star, so it's got to be Rare Candy, Vikavolt, Strong Charge. Can he pull it all off?
He's going to kick things off with Ultra Ball to find that Tapu Lele. As you said, he needs to chain Guzma if he's ever going to win this game. There's so many energy on Alex's field. There's no way that he's not taking at least a prize a turn. And it's going to be down to Joey to really hope that he can just get over the line with enough Stormy Winds and manual attachments. It looks like he's kind of foregoing the Vikavolt at this point. He's just sort of getting rid of it.
Yeah, I think he realizes he has to Guzma.
Yeah.
2 turns in a row.
Yeah.
And in this turn, he can kind of use his last gasp of burst and get one more energy into play with Stormy Winds. He can get to 6 energy in play this turn, so he can get to 180 with an attachment and the Stormy Winds ability. So he can get the knockout this turn. It's the next turn that's going to be challenging. Look at his hand. He's got 3 cards. He's going to need to somehow get 3 energy back into play and play a Guzma once again. I don't know. it's going to be a close finish, but I'm not sure what he can do.
Well, the prize cards helped him out. There was a Guzma in there at the very least, so he's sort of replenished that. There's a small window for him. Let's see what Alex can do, though. I can't see him not taking the 2 prize knockout that's in front of him with his non-GX. That's always going to be happening. It kind of feels inevitable at this point. So yeah, all Alex needs to do is replenish those energies, announce an attack, and say, Joey, do you have this crazy combination of cards? So far, he's only at 3 energies in play. He can manually attach up to 4. He can Stormy Winds once, up to 5 energy. So he does need to have the combination of Rare Candy, Vikavolt, and Guzma all in his hand if he's going to be able to take these final 2 prizes, and it doesn't look like he's there right now. There's no stalling target really either.
Yeah, the only thing I can see at this point is Alex left himself very slightly vulnerable. He does not have 3 energy on his Rayquaza on the bench. So if Joey can get rid of the Viridian Forest and then knock out Shaman Prism Star, Alex would need to find 1 more energy to win, but Joey can't even take the knockout. He's going to extend his hand and concede. And it looks like Alex Dow is going to take this one 2 games to 1. He will move on to 1-0 and kick off things with a win here at the Europe International Championships.
Incredible to see 2 Rayquaza GX-based decks in the first round of this European Internationals. We've been sort of talking backstage about what archetypes we were expecting to see, and that was not on the list of decks. I can tell you that much. But we're seeing 2 different approaches towards Rayquaza here. Alex bringing the more sort of turbo-based build with just as many Rayquaza GX as possible, a few Naganadel in his deck list as well to sort of see him through, as well as those Wishful Batons, which have sort of crept into the game more and more throughout the season. We've seen the sort of Quagsire Naganadel-based builds using them to good effect, and now Alex is using them onto those Rayquazas to give him 90 more damage every time there's a knockout, and just make sure you have a good flow of attackers. Joey already had those Losander Labs, so maybe he was expecting some of those sorts of tools this weekend. Maybe he's also things like the bodybuilding dumbbells, which has crept into some Zoroark control players' builds. So some people are aware of these tools, and they're trying to really take those to their advantage this weekend, and that seems to be what Alex has done very well in the first round.
Yeah, we're in a spot where Field Blower is just not a card that gets played very often. There's not enough important tool cards in most decks to warrant a spot for Field Blower in your deck. There's things like a Skateboard, which are annoying when you Field Blower them away, but those kinds of decks play a bunch of Switch anyway, so it just never feels worth it to put Field Blower in your deck at this point. And that's when these weird tools that are kind of reactive and have never really been very good can creep up and be like, hey, if you don't have a way to stop these, they are pretty powerful. Things like the Wishful Baton, the bodybuilding dumbbells. We've even seen the buff padding sometimes in the